but also the skin is a sensory system from the inside out too, that all of the cells in the body can tell time. What is going on? What is my body trying to tell me through my skin?
Welcome to the Vitalist Podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist. Michelle, welcome to the Vitalist Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Dr. Michelle Jeffries is not your typical dermatologist. She's triple board certified in dermatology, pediatric dermatology, and integrative medicine, blending cutting-edge dermatologic science with ancient wisdom, chronobiology, mindfulness, and quantum healing. As the founder of the skin clock method, Dr. Jeffries views the skin as a vibrant, elegant matrix deeply influenced by our body's natural rhythms. Her approach, known as Chrono Beauty, goes far beyond prescriptions and protocols. She helps clients align with their internal timing to unlock radiant skin from the inside out. With over 15 years of clinical practice and an additional certification in functional medicine and psychology, she is redefining what it truly means to heal and to glow from the inside out. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
It's always such a delight to be in your space.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Love it.
I want to start triple board certified. That's a huge undertaking. And I would love to know the evolution of that. Like, how did you go from peds? I know you started in psychology with a PhD program. Take me down like the whole journey of how you got into derm.
So I wasn't born a dermatologist. I started out doing a lot of other different things. I did always think I was going to be a physician, but then I went through some personal traumas that kind of pivoted me away from medicine. There were people very close to me that died, and so I didn't feel like I could be a physician and be around death, and so I went into psychology instead. So then as I was going through my training, I was in a PhD program, and that kind of inkling of I still wanted to be a physician would not go away. So I took all of these classes, while I was in my PhD program at night, pre-med, doing all of my requisition classes I had to do. And then I applied to medical school, and I thought, well, if I get in, I'll go. And if I don't get in, then I won't go. And I really wanted to do osteopathic medicine because I really believed in their holistic perspective. And then as I was going through medical school, I was trying to figure out what specialty I wanted to do. I loved kids. I'd done it with psychology. So I thought, I'm gonna go through the pediatrics route. I did a rotation in pediatric dermatology, and that was with Dr. Ron Hansen. He wrote the textbook. There's a textbook on pediatric dermatology, and he was just starting out a pediatric dermatology fellowship. It was literally the first patient on the first day. We walked in, and as he analyzed this child's rash and what was going on, it completely aligned with the way I thought. And I said, Dr. Hansen, I want to do dermatology. And he's like, okay, but you're in your last year. And there was an osteopathic derm residency program in town that I could also apply to.
All three, osteo, derm,
Well,
pediatric.
it's osteopathic dermatology and then the pediatric dermatology fellowship.
Wow.
So that all unfolded, and I finished my training. I became a dermatologist. And when I had finished, I went through 4 years of medical school, a year of a pediatric residency, 4 years of dermatology residency and fellowship. And it was a little bit bittersweet. I also ended up going through a divorce through that whole process too. So it was, my family was there, but I wasn't married. I felt kind of lonely. And then I was wondering, what the heck is going on with my health that I can't even walk across the stage at my graduation? I'm a physician. I should know. And so that pivoted me into integrative medicine.
Wow.
And that was kind of how I came into integrative medicine. So,
What a story. I mean, all that education, all that schooling, and then the life intermixing between all of it. It's a lot to carry. So when I say skin, most people are like, oh, you're talking about skincare, like beauty. It's more like that cosmetic side of things. But you look at skin completely different, right? So explain to me, like, what is the difference between a traditional dermatologist and then how you step into the role as a dermatologist?
So the main difference, I feel, is that a traditional dermatologist will just treat things just kind of as they're going. We might think a little bit of deeper things that might be contributing to it, but it's not the primary focus. We're kind of working with what we're seeing and addressing as much as we can. When we're doing integrative dermatology, we're thinking, okay, we have this spectrum of what's happening in the skin. Well, how could that be related to the rest of the body? How about the mind? How about their environment? Everything else going on with them? And that's just not part of traditional dermatology training. We get trained in, thousands and thousands of skin diseases and how to manage them and how to address them and how to prescribe medications to help. And that is amazing. The modern technology we have for that is great. But what about supporting the other parts of the system? So that's where integrative dermatology, I think, really plays a role, where we can kind of just give all of these extra things to support the system. So if we do need to prescribe something, maybe we can support their system with something else that, maybe it can mitigate some side effects or some potential issues. Maybe their stress levels of just having a skin issue and having everybody see it is overwhelming. How can we support them in that as well? I do feel, though, that traditional dermatology and integrative dermatology are merging. There is a big movement of integrative dermatology. There's a lot of dermatologists getting training in integrative dermatology as well.
I'm curious, like 10 years ago, the world was different. We looked at health so differently. It wasn't this integrative functional med side of things. It wasn't holistic in any way. Was it hard to stay in that lane of dermatology and also branch out onto the integrative side?
It was a lot because no one knew then really about being gluten-free. It was a big thing. And, and I was oh, but I went gluten-free and it really helped me, and I always just kind of felt if I was talking about these things, I was weird. I was different. I didn't belong. I grew up in Sedona, so I knew I had some different views on things, but I felt, gosh, I wanted to belong. I wanted to be part of traditional dermatology and be a really good dermatologist and serve my patients. But I had this other knowledge and this other curiosity that helped me that I wanted to help others with. And so I researched that, and that's how I stumbled on the integrative dermatology or the integrative medicine fellowship. I was so nervous. I'm oh, there's going to be all these other physicians. They're interested in it. They created and cultivated such a sacred space and such a loving space.
Okay, so let's get into the skin. There's a connection between the nerve system and the skin, which I'm sure you intimately know, but there's a really interesting origin of that connection. So in embryology, Sarah and I talk about this a lot, but the skin and the nerve system, they come from the same ectoderm, right? The same germ layer.
Correct.
So we look at the nerve system as it's a connection, it's a perception system. So why wouldn't skin be the same thing and have that level of depth? So can you speak to how is the skin a sensory perceiving thing? How does it read our environment and translate that information?
It actually has a nervous system that responds to things and sends signals to the brain and the body. It also has its own immune system. It has a cortisol system. It has kind of a generation system where it'll generate new skin cells. We get a new epidermis, a new top layer of our skin in every month. And you can almost think of the skin as this barrier between our inner body and the outside environment. And of course, we're going to be able to sense things not only on the outside of our body, but the inside. So, a lot of us think of nerve endings and pain in our skin or pain in a nerve. But also the skin is a sensory system from the inside out too. And it's almost like a portal in between and a communication of, okay, what is going on outside my body? What is going on inside? And then what is that barrier? And do I need to, work on that barrier, protect that barrier? Do I need to make my immune system, more active to protect me? Do I need to release stress hormones in my skin to help protect? Or can I just kind of relax and do my usual, making my skin cells, relaxing, doing my thing? It's all connected. There's no way to separate it from anything else.
Well, yeah. How do you separate the skin from the nerve system, the fascial system? There's these layers to it. Talk to me a little bit about the germination of how the skin proliferates.
Yeah, so the skin has 3 layers. We have way deep the subcutaneous fat, that's considered a layer. The next layer is the dermis. That's kind of what has our collagen, elastin, kind of our thickness. And then the very, very top layer is called an epidermis. That is the one that gets a new layer in every single month. And there's different cells at the different layers. So there's called a basal layer is right at the very bottom of the epidermis. That's that top layer. And it's kind of the border between that top layer of skin and then the dermis right underneath. in that area, we have just kind of like this lining that kind of protects. After that, we have cells that go above it and start to grow. And they first start out growing and clustering together, and then they kind of bond, and they have these little adhesions that bond together. And then as they go through the weeks of the month, they kind of release their bonds and then loosen, and then finally shed. So we call this keratinization. But the normal maturation is to go from the bottom layer, slowly they kind of adhere to each other, loosen up, and then shed. We take for granted that we don't realize. We think, oh, I just have dry skin and I'm shedding. But there's a whole process that was unfolding underneath that.
Well, and that's the cool thing. Like, the skin is a process in time. Mm-hmm. And so as we experience our life, this shedding that naturally happens, so like I don't have to tell my skin to shed. So it's naturally doing this process of cell turnover, and then we live our life. So someone once told me that the skin has a memory. But when we are just shedding these layers, how does the skin have a memory? Like, where is the memory going?
Yeah. So it's fascinating. I don't think we fully understand.
Yeah.
There are memory T cells, which are immune cells. And those are cells that remember what infections they've been exposed to. And then they'll send a message to the lymph node, say you have to respond to this, and then go back out to, fight the infection wherever it is. But, if you've ever had an injury in your skin, you have a scar. And how does, every time you get a new skin layer, and how does it know to form a scar there? Well, the scar is actually when you don't have the epidermis. The dermis has been damaged. And there's certain cells called fibroblasts that come and heal it. And if they heal it extra firm, then you get the extra thick scars. If they feel it regular, you just have a regular scar. But they don't need a memory because they're not rejuvenating in that spot. So that's some of the difference between epidermis and normal skin and then scar tissue, which is fascinating. But then, yes, what is the innate wisdom of the skin? How does it even know that it's supposed to go into the next layer? Where does it get its signaling? How does it know this? And so, it has to be something that happens in our embryo and stem cells and how we generate all of our different organ systems, all of the different cells in our body. And one of the, facts of medicine that we learned that all of the cells in the body can tell time. And that blew my mind. All of my cells in my body know what time of day it is. They know what they're supposed to do at what time. And so it comes down to this really interesting quantum science and, focusing on circadian rhythms of when we get exposed to light at different times of the day, it gets perceived through our body, so our eyes and our skin. And then it sends a message to the brain. The brain has a little kind of area, it has a fancy name called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, an SCN. And that kind of is our master clock in the brain. And that tells all of the cells to turn on or off if it's day or night and what is going on. And then it sends all of these different neural messages, hormonal messages all over our body. And then all of the different clocks in all of our organ systems receive those messages. And then they're able to see what time it is. And so that was part of how I got into this whole concept of light and circadian rhythm and time and our skin telling time. And as a dermatologist, we're so protective about the sun, but we actually need some of it to tell time. We need some of it to set our body systems. So that was where I kind of, felt like, okay, this is something really different. I want to make sure that my cells can tell time and that I help people with all of their other, health issues integratively. What can I do as a dermatologist to make sure they are protecting, not overdoing it, but still getting enough sun that they're triggering their, master clocks and their clocks in their body?
Oh, this clock thing is really interesting. And this is, I think a lot of your work is based on this, right? The skin clock method, all of it. But tell me, what is Chrono Beauty? How are we looking at time and beauty?
I guess I just want to say and back up a little bit. This whole idea of the cells, telling time and how it links to the skin, it was something I had been thinking about for a long time. And it was always in the back of my mind. And it was actually on a table with you when you were treating me that all of these links kind of came together about Chrono Beauty, about the skin clock method. And we were in the middle of a treatment, and you have such a way of just kind of releasing the mind, tapping into inner knowledge, and things just started connecting and flowing. And I was thinking about, well, okay, the skin has a cycle like we just talked about where every month it comes in. Somehow it knows how to do that. there's a daily rhythm. There's like something that, we wake up in the morning, there's sunrise, there's midday, there's sunset, and that helps set all of our clocks. We have our menstrual cycle that, somehow every month we know, like, we're going to be going through this. And then, if we're, a typical cycle, in 28 days, we're going to have our menses. And then there's the seasons of the earth, like there's the solstices, the equinoxes, and all of our systems change based on that. Like our skin is different, what we eat is different, our energy is different. So it was actually on the table here with you that I was like, all of these things line up. And if we can actually tap into those natural cycles and align with how our body is supposed to be on rhythm, then would we be able to find our innate healing ability, our kind of our true holistic beauty inside, and align all of our systems, align our skin cycles, align our menstrual cycles, align our gut cycles.
Okay, there's something also very interesting about the skin that I'm sure you know of. I actually didn't realize that the skin makes neurotransmitters.
Yes.
I had no idea it made serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. So elaborate, how, blow people's mind, because I don't think anybody knows that unless you went to school and studied dermatology.
Right. And it's not part of our typical dermatology training either. So, and it's just, there's so many I think the main thing is just to know the skin doesn't operate by itself. And it has, if you actually think about, well, what is my skin supposed to do? What are the main functions? Well, it's supposed to perceive what's out in the environment, make sure that my inner body stays safe, and do what it needs to do to either protect, open, heal, nourish, whatever it has to do. So of course it's going to have receptors for everything else that's inside our body to connect to those. It can't work in isolation, right? So, and it has its own cortisol. It makes its own stress hormone. So there's just all these different types of cells that are going to respond in the skin depending. So, we talked through what makes up the skin layers, but there's other types of cells in the skin. There's a certain type of cell called a Langerhans cell, which is part of the immune system. There's something that got a little bit more famous recently called a Merkel cell, because Jimmy Buffett ended up dying of a Merkel cell cancer. And it's a very, very rare type of skin cancer, but a Merkel cell is the sensory part of our skin. So there are all these different, different pieces to it, without going into a lot of technical detail that, is hard to understand. Just basically there's not just skin in the skin. There's immune, there's hormones, there's neurotransmitters, there's cortisol, there's perception. There's one of the most fascinating ones is the fascia, and just how quickly messages can be sent through fascia. And so the fascia that's in the muscle goes into the skin layers too. The nerves that come from the spinal cord, they go all the way out to the skin. Hormones too. There's a lymphatic system too. So it's all connected. It's all here. So
wow. And it's so cool that you get to work with that medium, because it does interconnect and interweave with everything. How does the skin respond when there's chronic amounts of cortisol? What are certain patterns that you see with people? Is it redness? Does the skin change in texture and tone? What do you see?
All of those things. And everybody's different. So it for sure. So when you're stressed out, I think, I look at it from kind of almost like a psychology perspective in a way. I think that's part of my background, and it helps me understand skin physiology too. And basically when we're really stressed, it's we're so maybe immersed in something that maybe isn't us, or we're so in our head about something that we can't see outside. So I think the skin is responding in those ways. When people are really stressed, you can be itchy. When you're itchy, you're really stressed too. And so they can send all of those different signals. So I see that with some patients depending on what kind of stress and how they're manifesting it. So,
wow. Are there skin types that link to personalities?
Well, I think people have tried to link that. I've looked into, have you heard of it's a salt cell? There's a different salts that we have in our body. I haven't fully looked into this. It's kind of one of my other curiosities. And supposedly there's different faces that look like a certain deficiency in different cell salts. And so there's a book out about it, which is very interesting. So there probably is, different things. And I feel people might feel like, okay, if they have a red nose, then they're, you know, embarrassed all the time, or they have like that personality, all the different types of skin issues. You know, psoriasis has been linked to anger and frustration. So eczema has been linked to like issues with self-identity. Who am I in the world? Things like that. So I think we try to kind of put it all together, whether or not there's science to, you know, fully back all of it up. But I feel like people are just their own selves, and things evolve and change. And it's like, you know, when I see someone for their skin exam, I can tell a lot about them just from their skin. And then I can tell what's changed when I see them for a follow-up, like what's going on. And sometimes it's an energetic vibe. Sometimes it's something going on in their skin. Sometimes it's their posture and how they're holding themselves, how they're holding the energy in their body.
I want to talk about light, because a lot of people don't spend time either in the sun, whether there's fears around skin cancer or whatnot. We live in Arizona, so there's an abundance of sun. But talk to me about light, natural light, and then also artificial light. How is this changing our bodies through the skin?
We've been trained so much in dermatology, avoid sunlight at all times, cover at all times. And I'm like, but I like the sun. And I didn't, like I said in the beginning, I was not born a dermatologist. I used to lay out with my dad. We competed for tans, and like, I love the sun. And so this whole information coming out now about the cells being able to tell time, and you actually need them exposed to the sun to be able to tell time, that was a game changer for me. So the main sun that we need that is the very, very low risk is sunrise. If we actually get out there at sunrise, we have the far infrared and red light coming up through sunrise. The UV index is 0. There's no UV light at that time. And if it is, it's very, very, very mild. And so that is the actual type of light. You don't look at the sun at sunrise. You can look and gaze, you know, down a little bit. But that sun just signaling that light into our eyes first thing in the morning immediately triggers that master clock. Hey, it's daytime. We got to do that cortisol spike. We got to wake everything up. We got to wake up all the cells in our body. Our body has to do all of these daytime activities. We can actually shut down the nighttime activities. If you're getting artificial light before sunrise, so looking at your phone before sunrise comes up, getting bright, bright blue light, that signal happens sooner than the actual natural light outside. Then if we're getting a lot of light at home before we go to bed, it's telling our body at night when we're looking at screens and watching TV or on our iPad or reading on a Kindle that doesn't have a dimmer, it's telling our bodies it's daytime. Our eyes are perceiving it's daytime. And so then when we put that down and we try to go to sleep, all of the clocks in our body are like, hey, it's daytime. We're doing all our daytime stuff. We're not resting. We're not recuperating. We're not detoxing and repairing. Melatonin's not on board. And so you don't sleep very well. And then if you're not sleeping well, you're not detoxing, repairing, and then that impacts things. We know that people that work in shifts and work overnight, they have high blood pressure issues, more prone to cancers, more prone to cardiovascular disease. So it's not just skin things, it's all of our body clocks. So, and at different times of the day, there's going to be different light. And I think one of the things that I learned that I really didn't know much about before is that UVA light, it first comes up maybe about, depending on where you are in the world and depending what time of day, UVA light comes up within maybe 45 minutes or an hour of sunrise. A little bit of that UVA light also helps trigger some of our clocks. Our, pregnenolone, that is part of one of our hormone cascades and kind of at the very peak of it, it's very sensitive to that signal, and in their mitochondria of the pregnenolone, very sensitive to start that trigger in our whole cascade of our steroid hormones. So then if we're able to get a little bit of UVA, that can be very helpful for our hormones. So you want to make sure that the UV index is not very high when UVA light comes up, so you want to go out early. Then there's UVB light. UVB light comes up an hour after the UVA light comes up. So, and then it ends the day, UVB light sets first and then UVA. And so there's different things that our body does at those different times. And then there's solar noon, where we know it's very hot. UV index is high, we got to protect.
Also, when you're talking to someone about using light to help the skin heal and all the other systems of the body, of course, because the skin, all the cells are going to listen to light, do they need to be exposed to light, like through the visual system, or can they just be outside at sunrise?
So ideally, you want the eyes exposed and the skin, and you don't want to wear glasses.
No sunglasses.
No sunglasses, no like readers. You don't want to be looking at a device when you're watching, out at sunrise too. It's always tempting, like, what time is it? What's going on in my email? Trying to multitask. But, and then the skin also has receptors for it as well. So a little bit of exposure there, but the UV index is 0. I see so much skin cancer. It's like the bulk of my day. And so, my skin cancer patients, a little bit of sunrise is okay. Being out a little bit at sunset is okay. But probably those other times a day, you might need to cover up a lot.
Yeah.
So you may not have a big window of when you can, have sunlight without the UV risk.
Gotcha.
And then people that haven't had any, skin cancers, have very, skin that tans very easily, maybe they can have a little bit more of a leeway. The trick with the sun exposure is if you get a lot of it, you're going to get the photo damage. So even if you don't get skin cancer, then you're going to be like, okay, I'm getting brown spots, age spots, and they may not show up then. They may show up years later. Your skin gets thinner. You lose some of the collagen, elastin. Things get looser. So there's all these things that happen down the road that you may not see now.
I was a lifeguard, never wore sunscreen. I mean, my parents let us swim all day in the summer, high noon. Mm-hmm. So I was exposed to so much sun. Like, is there anything we can do to kind of reverse or slow the damage that may be coming from the sun?
Absolutely. There's so much. The main thing is cover with clothing if you know you're going to be out there for a while. And you know that you're at a high risk time and you know that you're prone to skin cancers. If you have clothing on that the sun, you won't get a tan through, you're going to get protection. If you have areas that are going to get exposed that you can't cover because you're not going to go out with a mask, covering your face and a hoodie and, everything.
Not yet.
Especially,
anyway.
right? No. And so sunscreen would be, the next thing outside of your body that you could put on. There's a lot of different data coming out about sunscreens. And so a lot of misperceptions, a lot of things that,
chemicals
that are in it, things like that. We usually recommend just doing a zinc oxide sunscreen. As dermatologists, we're usually not a fan of the chemical ones for the most part. So the zinc oxide ones are the ones that are the physical sunscreens.
The white. It's the pure white.
White.
It's like white face paint.
Yes. And this is where it gets kind of confusing because what's happening with sunscreens is when you have a zinc one, people know, okay, it's a more natural one. It's a mineral one. I want the zinc one. And so on the outside, sometimes of a sunscreen, it'll say it's a zinc or a mineral sunscreen. And you turn it over, and zinc will be one of the ingredients, but then it'll have the chemical sunscreens too. So you really have to read the labels and make sure that you're only getting the zinc one. Also, you want to make sure that you're getting both UVA and UVB protection. A lot of sunscreens used to be just UVB. UVB is the ray that burns us. So we know when we're getting it. UVA penetrates deeper, and so we don't know. So that's the one that does aging. That's also the one that goes through our car windows when we drive. And even if we have tint, it doesn't always protect us. So that's why we get a lot of sun damage even when we're driving. So that's the sunscreen kind of thing. And then also they did a research study on how much we apply. And they even researched dermatologists, and even dermatologists didn't apply enough. So it's definitely, you have to put a lot on, you have to reapply. It's kind of a pain. It's hot, all of those things. But if you know you're at risk and you're not able to cover and you have to be out there, that's one thing. And then we go to what we can do inside. And I think this is where the next kind of phases of things are coming out. Okay. There's different supplements that can give you antioxidant protection from the inside out. They're not replacement for sun protection entirely. They just kind of add to it. So there was a fern plant that grows in the Amazon, and it's called Polypodum leucomatus. Really long, weird word, right?
Fern plant.
Fern plant, just fern plant. And they noticed when people took this that they weren't as sun sensitive. There are some people that actually have an allergy, and then they noticed when they took this herb, they didn't have the reactions if they're out in the sun. So companies have picked this up, and it is in some supplements that are over the counter. You can get it in many places. And so that's an option to take. We also found out there was a research study in Australia where they had 2 groups of people. All of them grew skin cancers and pre-skin cancers. One group took niacinamide, 500 milligrams twice a day for a year, and the other group didn't. So we're thinking there must be something to it. Instead of getting 4 cancers, they got 3. Like, it didn't completely eliminate, but it definitely dipped it down. So that also can be added with the fern plant together. Then there's all of the foods, right? The things that have the carotenoids, the vitamin A's, all the things that have the rich, vibrant red, orange colors. Those also as well.
The tan fruit, right?
Yeah.
Oranges and reds.
Yes, all of the things that have all of that. So that can be helpful. And then there's obviously is if we're eating a lot of things that are causing a lot of inflammation, our body's probably not going to be, protecting us against, skin cancer and sun exposure. So it's probably going to be focused on trying to dampen inflammation. But if we're eating a vibrant, rich of vegetables, a rainbow of fruit and colors of every color of the rainbow, we're doing a lot of protein, we're getting balanced fats, and we're doing all of that, and not a lot of inflammatory foods.
So going back to the memory of skin.
Yeah.
So if someone grows up more towards the equator line, is that because they're getting a memory of sun at an early age, and so they're less prone to certain cancers, or they have more resiliency with the sun? Is there any data on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So it's interesting because before we were able to travel all over the world at a whim, different cultures with different skin types lived in different areas on the earth, and it matched up. And now we have a mixture of everyone everywhere, and so things are not matching up. And so I think sometimes that might be why some people have a lot of vitamin D deficiencies. They're maybe not getting, sun exposure where maybe their, background and ancestral, DNA did. There's also those kind of abnormalities we can have in our DNA in the skin of our vitamin D receptor. So it may not even work as well. You may get a ton of sun exposure and it may not work as well. So there's all of these different confounding factors to that question to be able to answer. And so I don't think we've sifted through enough of the data. There was a series of studies years ago of looking at if you just had big pulses throughout the year of a lot of intense sun exposure and then didn't have sun exposure other times of the year. I'm thinking of myself growing up in the Midwest where we would in the winter be indoors. The second it was 50 degrees out, in my bikini, laying out, getting as much sun as I could and trying to tan all summer. But then so many months of the year indoors. So we call that kind of a very intermittent versus people that are exposed to the sun chronically and just get a little bit every single day. And so they did a research study kind of comparing, and what they were saying is if you had the chronic, all the time sun exposure, you didn't have as much risk of skin cancer. When you had the intermittent, it was more.
So I have this friend, and she has had skin stuff her whole life, but she's under a lot of stress. She has a very rigid demeanor, just sharp, angled, tight. She just walks around tight. What would you say? How would you explore this with her? How would you open up the conversation?
Yeah, first of all, very common to just have a lot of stress and be guarded, right? And just so that you have this barrier of stress can't get to me, I got to protect myself. When we look at stress and the skin, you can think of this as almost from an evolutionary perspective. If we actually had lesions on our skin and open things, the predator would be we're good. I'm just going to pass on you. I'm going to go to the next, whatever, thing that doesn't have as many skin lesions because we don't know what's going on. And you think about this historically in leprosy. When people had leprosy, they were isolated. They had a skin lesion. It was contagious. They were on an island. They were, not welcome anywhere. So we think about this as the skin as if, when we're under a lot of stress, our body does not care about our skin. It allows things to grow. It allows things to happen. It allows things to flare up. So that's part of the reason why when you're stressed out, you get acne, your eczema flares up, your psoriasis flares up. Because our body's kind of pre-programmed of hey, if you're super stressed, we're just going to let that go because we got to focus on the rest of your body. And then you're not going to be eaten by a predator too. So we're covering all the bases. So that's kind of how I see it, is that it's a protective mechanism in a lot of ways. So the body has to focus. You think of like that fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It's got to focus on the lungs, the heart, the muscles, all of those internal organs of survival. If we have something on our skin, no big deal. Like in a way, we're not going to get eaten by something. We're good. We'll figure it out later. We'll fix it. It's not a big deal. It's not life-threatening for the most part. Then we think about skin cancer. So skin cancer is when one of the cells, you're getting a new layer in, it makes a mistake, and then it doesn't get corrected. So a lot of times, our skin cells will make a mistake, and then there'll be different parts of the body that'll correct it. But if it keeps making that mistake and then doesn't get corrected, that's when we start to notice, oh, there's something on our skin that's not supposed to be there. It looks weird. And so you have this buildup of the atypical cells. And then you think of like, okay, when I'm stressed, my body's immune system is not really kind of worried about that necessarily. It's focusing on other things. And maybe it's like missing the mark on, detecting cancers. It's kind of allowing those things to go. And there's different types of cancers that grow slow versus fast. So some of them that grow a little bit slower and maybe less detective of it might be like, okay, we'll just let that go for a little bit.
Oh, that is so interesting, the protective mechanism. I've never really thought of it that way. I will communicate that to her, or she can watch the podcast.
So that, I see a lot of patients that are really stressed about their skin. Like it can be very devastating. A lot of times it can even be like very deforming, sometimes permanently, if it's a scarring condition. And it impacts your image of who you are, how you present yourself to the world. Like you really have to figure that out. And it's, I don't know. It's helpful to know like there's actually some reasoning and some things behind it, and that sometimes it's not all our fault if there's like protective mechanisms that are working. I'm definitely of the kind of the thought process that our bodies are always looking out for our better good. They're not trying to hurt us. They're not trying to do something to us. They're trying to alert us or let us know or do something protective in some way. But what I see with skin things is when you kind of have like an underlying anger, frustration, I see a lot more inflammation in the skin. So a lot of more of the inflammatory things.
I kind of want to bring up cold plunges because a lot of people use them. I don't know if you see something different with men versus women, but when we expose the skin to that kind of cold exposure, how does the skin behave and what's it communicating to the body?
I don't think we know all of the things because I don't think someone's like in dermatology researching the cold plunges.
Okay.
But you can think of cold exposure. Like we know that the blood vessels are going to constrict, that things are going to kind of lock down a little bit. Things are going to kind of seal. Whereas if you're doing like a warm sauna or things like that, that you want to open the pores to detox to open. So I don't know the data on it, which would be very curious. I love that question of, gosh, what would be going on? And then how would those signals of, nitrous oxide and, all of those things, how would the stress hormone work? How would all of that unfold? I don't know.
What about like helping people restore that natural sense of time in the body? Are there things that you do personally in your life or that you tell patients or clients to do that, hey, this is how you can get back into the natural rhythm of time with your skin?
The one thing that I love is sunrise. If I can get out there before sunrise and just be there and watch the sunrise, I'm almost giddy. I just get so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a new day. I'm so grateful. So there's part of your mindset that goes into this. But then I'm like, okay, I'm training my brain. I'm training my eyes. I'm training my skin, turning on all my clocks. I get really excited and I do some movement as well. So sunrise is like an easy thing. I'm not so good about sunset, but you also, if you're not a morning person, maybe you do, sunset and get outside at sunset and watch the sunset and get your body and your eyes exposed to sunset and watch the sun go down and get all of that infrared and far infrared rays. And so I realize like it's the micro moments. It's those little bits. If we can take those little bits and just do a little bit at a time and kind of know what is my body doing at sunrise? Okay, got it. I can kind of align myself with sunrise. I can kind of pause and see, okay, what am I doing at sunrise? Then we can think about, okay, what's happening at noon maybe? What is my body doing at noon? What is my skin doing? What is my nourishment doing? What is my sleep cycle? I'm supposed to be really awake. How am I? What is my cortisol doing? How is my stress level? And just taking those micro moments at different points of the day.
Yes, you're kind of checking in with the clock sun, right? And then reflecting back on what your skin clock is doing too.
Right. And then there's these, kind of this overarching kind of clock or rhythm that I came across. And I called it the Luminous Clock because I was trying to think of a name of it. And it just it illuminates everything. So I thought of it as a luminous clock, and it overarches a lot of our different patterns. And if we could use that as an overlay, it makes things a lot simpler. So this clock has 4 parts.
Okay, please explain the luminous clock.
The first part is called illuminate. It's that sacred pause of just taking stock, creating that space. Where am I on these different times of day? Where are my systems? What's happening? And kind of guiding yourself through all of that. Then there's this emergence of creative energy and what is emerging, what kind of energy is coming up. After we pause, we eventually get to a point where momentum builds and we want to create or do something. So then we're in this creation mode. So I call that emerge. And then after we've been creating for a little bit, we are at this point where we're kind of manifesting things. Things are actually coming to light. We're not just creating, things are actually tangible and happening. And we're sustaining them, nurturing them, making them cultivated. So we're in this manifesting stage. And then after we've manifested for a while, things transcend. We let go of some things. We kind of, things let go. You don't hold on as much. What is not serving me? What do I not need today? And the day is like that. In the morning, we're kind of taking stock at sunrise. What's going on? We're illuminating and pausing what's happening. As we're emerging into the day, we're kind of, okay, what's my day going to be like? What kind of creative things are happening? What's happening with work? What's happening with this? What's happening in my relationships? What's, happening with my career? And then there's a part of the day where we're really manifesting, nourishing, going, working. We're in a rhythm. We're in a flow. And then as the day unfolds and, nightfall comes and sunset, we're letting go. We're okay, we have to let go of the day.
I like this wave, this rhythm that you have. Yeah. Okay. So you teach people that, how to be in tune with the natural rhythm of the day and how that actually can help the body heal and regenerate. As we close, if the skin could say one thing and people would really listen, what would it want to say?
Ooh. I think it would just say, I send you messages. Please listen to me. It's a messaging system. And it tells you all the time what's going on. It tells you, when you have a skin lesion, when you have a breakout, when you have eczema, when you have acne, psoriasis. It's sending a message that there's an imbalance or something to pay attention to. Not that there's something bad or wrong, but hey, pay attention. So it's like a messaging system, a way to alert your body to what's going on. There's something that you need to look at, either inside your body, outside your body, the connection in between. And diving deep into that with a curious mind, not being so judgmental and hard on ourselves because we can see things. Hey, I'm curious. Why is this happening? What is going on? What is my body trying to tell me through my skin? Because we can see it. It's beautiful. And then when you listen to it and it goes away and the skin lesion goes away, you're okay, I got it. And so you're able to kind of find this holistic messaging of what's going on in your body. And then when you do something that helps it, it goes away and you can see it. I see it as a messenger.
A messenger, the medium messenger. Well, Dr. Jeffries, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you, connect with you, reach you?
So I'm mostly on Instagram, most active there. So Instagram handle is at Dr. Jeffries. I also have a website, drmichellejeffries.com, and the Skin Clock Method also has its own website. There'll be some masterclasses coming out, and like we talked about with the Chrono Beauty and the Skin Clock Method, there's going to be a lot of little mini retreats walking through all those different cycles. It'll be in bite-sized pieces so that it's not overwhelming. You can dive into a little bit of presence and walk through all of those things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. I truly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist Podcast. Till next time.